Welcome to the Danny Clinkscale Reasonably Irreverent podcast. Insightful and witty commentary, probing interviews, and detours from the beaten path.
Welcome to Kansas City Profiles presented by Easton Roofing. The word iconic is probably wildly overused, and maybe it's been rather overused as far as this particular podcast is concerned, but there's no question that Denny Matthews is the iconic baseball announcer for the Kansas City Royals. A baseball Hall of Famer, a member of multiple Halls of Fame, Denny Matthews has been one of the Royals announcers and the lead announcer for most of the Kansas City Royals since their very inception. He got a baseball job just a couple of years after college after never having called a baseball game before. Technically, a real baseball game on the radio. Certainly his resume was called at a Major League Baseball park, and we'll get into that. But he has seen the Royals go through rather quickly good times, then a lengthy period of bad times, and then the good times once again, and then kind of back to the bad. He has seen it all and called it all in his own inimitable style. He is plain and straightforward. He is somebody who knows the game so well, having played it. He played college football with never having played high school football. He's done a string of remarkable things in his career, all the while keeping himself as a rather private person here in Kansas City for somebody who is so important and such a integral part of the sports scene of Kansas City. He tells great stories. He is amiable. He's funny. And it's an absolute pleasure to have Denny Matthews as my guest on Kansas City Profiles, presented by Easton Roofing. I'm here with Joe Spiker, owner of Easton Roofing, and boy, we had to negotiate a million things in 2020, but Easton Roofing navigated them all. As 2021 rolls out, what should we expect this coming storm season?
Well, Danny, it'll be the same thing as it is every year. You know, the storms come, and you've got the guys out knocking on doors offering quote-unquote free inspections. Be wary as a homeowner. If somebody's knocking on your door, they probably need the work, and if they need the work that bad, they may be willing to do something untoward to get it. So if somebody knocks on your door, says they want to give you a free inspection, just tell them have a great day and give us a call. We'll come out for free and give you a good, honest opinion as to whether or not you need to do anything at all with your roof.
And what's the best way to get in touch with Easton Roofing?
You can always find us online at eastonroofing.com or give us a call at 913-257-5426.
Easton Roofing. Integrity matters. It's time now to get some great assistance on health care with Chad Beisel from NoNonsenseHealthCareNinja.com. And Chad, even your business's name would indicate that you have a real aggressive way and an important way to go after some health insurance for your clients.
What I've found out in the industry is just a lot of people are really confused. They don't know what plans are good, what their plans offer, how they cover. And so I've just taken the approach of being really educated on what options are available to clients and showing them all the options that are available and making sure they understand them so they can pick and choose what options are good for them.
And one thing that's really important, of course, is access to doctors and hospitals.
Absolutely. That's becoming a big issue for a lot of people. Some of the plans out there are going to restrict those clients to where they can and cannot go. So if you live just outside the Kansas City metro, some of the counties outside, you may not be able to go to some of the hospitals up here in the Kansas City area. So making sure that you have a plan that's got doctors and hospitals and places you want to go is really, really important today.
Learn more by visiting NoNonsenseHealthCareNinja.com and let Chad help you. Cinematic Visions has been an affordable solution for professional media production in Kansas City since 2003, offering award-winning video production and creation, as well as a wide array of digital and social media management services. From planning, scripting, filming, editing, and post-production, to delivering your product to a watching world, Cinematic Visions will provide professional and affordable services for you and your business with the necessary return on investment to make it all worthwhile. Cinematic Vision's goal is to unlock the power of storytelling through video and a strong online presence for your company. Beyond the numbers, they want to inspire and evoke your clients to feel and act. Let my friends at Cinematic Visions embed your brand where it belongs, in your customers' minds. You can find them online at cinematicvisions.com or with a quick phone call at 816-600-6300. Firsthand, I have enjoyed the benefits of the CBD products from Canaway. My back feels better and better these days as a major part of my routine are the pain-relieving salve and the pure gold oil. And recently I had the pleasure of a treatment session using the Canaway CBD in conjunction with the Microlight 830 cold laser. The non-invasive treatment session worked wonders, and I could barely tell I was even being touched. TML 830 is the first 3B cold laser to get FDA approval, and in addition, the combination treatment with CBD is patent pending. The new smart laser is the only hands-free cold laser in the world and is used by athletic trainers, chiropractors, MDs, physical therapists, and veterinarians everywhere. You can learn more about all the great benefits from the complete line of Canaway CBD products by contacting my friend Sherry McCants at 515-208-6312. That's 515-208-6312 to get outstanding information about Canaway.
If you'd like to join these and other great sponsors and market your business to a growing and engaged audience, contact us at danny@dannyclinkscale.com. Look forward to hearing from you.
Denny, you were born in Jacksonville, Florida, but moved early on to Bloomington, Illinois. What are your very first memories of being little Denny Matthews?
Well, I don't remember anything about Florida because I was taken away by my parents who grew up in Illinois, so I was there 6 weeks. So
right, there you
very
go.
few memories of Jacksonville.
I would think not. So what are your first memories of Bloomington?
Well, my dad was in the service. He was in the Navy, and he came back after about a year, and of course I had no idea who he was or why he was there, but lived with my mom, my grandparents, her mom and dad, and I remember those flashes of memory from, probably 3 years old, maybe 2.5, 3.5. My grandfather worked on the railroad, and he was an engineer in the yards in Bloomington, and every once in a while my grandmother would take me down to the train yard, and he was a switch engine engineer, and he would come across the tracks, pick me up, take me back to the engine. He'd hand me up to the fireman in the cab of the diesel, and I'd ride around with him for an hour. And, of course, when you're 4, 5, 6 years old, why, that's the big leagues.
Absolutely the case. When did you start to get your interest in sports?
Well, when my dad came back from the service, and again, I'm 4.5, he was a basketball and baseball player, excuse me, at Illinois State University. In fact, he was the first All-American baseball player at Illinois State University, and had a chance to sign with either the White Sox or the Cincinnati Reds, but then something called World War II came along, and that kind of took care of that.
And obviously he was a very good athlete, so he passed some of that along to him. Was it a natural thing for you? Did you like it? Did he, I'm not saying force you, but did he encourage you?
Yeah, very much. Baseball, basketball, everything in season. And 3 younger brothers, and he taught really all 4 of us how to play the game, especially baseball. Baseball and basketball were his 2 specialties, and so all 4 of us grew up in a sports atmosphere, so to speak, and he was very supportive. He was, as you say, and I wish I could have seen him play, but
right.
That was impossible, but a good athlete to play at a college of that stature in both baseball and basketball, and really be praised for his baseball acumen and ability.
Both of your parents worked for State Farm Insurance. How would you describe their relationship?
Well, they met. My dad grew up in Danville, Illinois, came to Bloomington Normal for college at Illinois State. At the time, it was Illinois State Normal University. Bloomington Normal are twin cities separated by only a street. And much like State Line here in our area, but they met when he was in college. My mom was, I think, 3 years younger and married, and I was the first of 4 to come along, all boys. But they had a great relationship. My mom was always very blunt and to the point. My dad was stern enough, but very supportive. They both were supportive, obviously, of all of our endeavors, and it was really a very enjoyable childhood, I would say.
Obviously, it's a college town. That's a pretty big school. Probably, obviously, not quite as big then. But what was it like growing up in the 40s in Bloomington?
Well, Illinois State was in Normal. Illinois Wesleyan, where I ended up, was in Bloomington, and again separated only by a boulevard. And a city, Division Street of all things. Someone very cleverly named it Division Street to separate the two little towns, and it's pretty creative, right?
Yeah.
But Illinois Wesleyan, Illinois State had a great rivalry in all sports. Then subsequently into the 60s, when I was involved, a year after my final year of football at Illinois Wesleyan, where they didn't play football anymore. Illinois State was about 27,000, and Illinois Wesleyan was still about 1,300 students, so there was quite a difference. But they still played basketball, and very competitively, and to this day still compete in baseball.
You did something pretty darn unusual. Is you played college football, and you didn't even play high school football? Is that correct?
That is correct. I played baseball and basketball in high school, but I just felt like I was too small to play football. And as I got into college, I became very good friends with Vic Armstrong, who was the quarterback at Illinois Wesleyan. And by that time, I had kind of grown out of my childhood in a sense, and I was 5'10", 170, and I used to watch college and pro football on TV, and I always liked to watch the wide receivers. Illinois Wesleyan never had a wide receiver offense until Vic, who had a great arm, was the quarterback, and he and I worked together at State Farm Employees Park in the summer. We had our summer job, 3-month job, and we'd talk and play catch with a football. And he told me one day, we're going to go to a wide receiver offense, and when we play catch, you catch everything. And why don't you come out? And in the back of my mind, oddly enough, before he had even said that, I had thought that it might be fun, it might work, who knows? Like you said, I never played high school football, so there was no basis of comparison. I had no idea what it would be like. But I went out, and Vic and I had a great relationship. He finished, I think, 11th in passing. I was 8th in pass receiving, small college, and it was a good tandem. It worked out. It was great fun, and I still could play baseball, and I started to broadcast some sports on the local radio station in between football and baseball seasons during my sophomore year in school in college.
How would you describe yourself as a baseball player?
Pretty good. I was left-handed infielder. Second base was my position. I worked out after my first year in college with the San Francisco Giants farm team in Decatur, Illinois. Gene Thompson was the area scout for the Giants at the time, and he scouted our games in the central part of Illinois, and he invited me to come down to Decatur in August of the summer and work out, which I drove down about an hour drive and worked out. And there was another player there working out who went to school in Decatur, St. Teresa High School, Decatur, who later became a big leaguer. His name was Del Unser, who was a good outfielder, played in the big leagues for a number of years. Yep. And they worked both of us out, and Del subsequently signed a professional contract. I went home, and Gene had invited me to come back and work out. This was in mid-August of the summer, and I had decided to play football. That was my sophomore year. I was going to go out and play football or try for the first time. And my dad said, he said, look at it this way, you're all jazzed up about playing football, so it'd be silly to sign. They're at the end of their minor league season anyway, and if you play baseball at Illinois Wesleyan and you're good enough, in 3 years from now, if you're still, a decent player and they think you are, you might have that chance. So that was fun. That was there were two guys that I worked out with who were playing for the Giants farm team that year. He was an outfielder pitcher, great big guy named Ollie Brown, who was a good big leaguer, and then Tito Fuentes, who was a longtime big league infielder. And he and I worked out together at second base. We had no idea, obviously, that he was going to be in the big leagues eventually. But the one thing that stood out for me working out with Tito was he had about 112 pounds of chains around his neck. And when we were fielding ground balls, those things were jangling and rattling around. I'm thinking, well, how can you field ground balls with all that jewelry around you and all those noises? And but he turned out to be pretty good. And I never did get any neck chains. So
your college sort of mate in the middle infield was Doug Rader, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, for 2 years. Doug played short, I played second, and he signed with the Houston Astros after his sophomore year. And, yeah, he was a terrific college player, obviously. Big, tall guy. He was kind of skinny at Wesleyan, but he sure grew into that body. He was about 6'3", could run well, great arm, and a good hitter. I know we played over at Notre Dame one Saturday afternoon. He got hit on the wrist, and it broke his wrist, so that was kind of a blow. But, yeah, they were all over him. All the scouts from different teams knew all about him, and it was just taken for granted that after that second year at Wesleyan, he was going to sign with the Astros.
So you mentioned that between playing football and baseball, you spent some of those short months doing some broadcasting. How did that develop for you? What I know, in reading a lot of stuff about you, that you just loved listening to the radio, and being in the Midwest, you could hear all kinds of different broadcasts, particularly at night. And was that something was there ever an inkling that was something you wanted to do, or did that develop in college?
Yeah, that came in college, because I think when you're in high school and even into college, you're more concerned with playing than you are with broadcasting. I mean, that was well down on the list probably, but the athletic director at Illinois Wesleyan, Jack Hornberger, was very good friends with the sports and news director at WJBC, the very good local radio station in Bloomington. And Jack told Don Newberg that he thought that I might be interested in broadcasting. And there were 4 high schools and the 2 colleges in the Twin Cities at the time, and they did a lot of basketball, high school and, of course, the 2 colleges. And they didn't have a large staff, and they were always looking for 2 or 3 people to kind of fill in on the basketball broadcast. They might even have as many as 3 games in one night. They do one live and then tape record the other 2, play those after the live broadcast. And so Don Newberg came out to Wesleyan, and we sat down, and he said, Jack Hornberger told me that you might be interested in broadcasting. And I said, well, yeah, that'd be fun, I guess. I didn't know anything about it. And but you're right, I used to listen to all the baseball games, and I'd flip around during the nighttime hours. And in that locale in central Illinois, we could get a lot of the broadcasts. But WJBC, the hometown radio station, was a Cardinal affiliate, had been for a while, and to this day they still are. And so it was Jack Buck, Harry Carey, Joe Garagiola for a couple of years. And hot summer night, I'd play by the radio there in the living room and just listen to the games. And had really no thought of broadcasting, but later on I realized that I was getting a pretty good education, subliminally, I guess you could say, just listening to those guys describe baseball. And so it was almost like having a college course, I think, laying there and listening to the games. I didn't have to do any homework. That was one good thing about it. But I think I was learning some pretty good lessons from some pretty darn good broadcasters. And we could get the Chicago guys, too. So, yeah, it was good. And we were in a good location for that.
When you finished college, you still did have an opportunity to play professionally, but at this point, you had to make sort of a life decision, I guess. And it's a funny story eventually that Buddy Blattner told you that you actually would have had a better chance to play professional baseball than be a major league announcer because of the amount of jobs. But how did you decide to make the decision at that point in time and maybe not pursue professional baseball, at least for a little while?
Well, by that time I was pretty enamored with broadcasting, and I figured, that might be a kind of a cool job if you could broadcast for a Major League Baseball team. I had no idea. I was so naive that there were, hundreds of guys trying to do the same thing, I guess. But as luck would have it, the Royals were born in '69, and I went back to work at State Farm after I got out of college for a few months, and then had a chance to go over to WMBD radio and TV in Peoria, which is a bigger market and only about 40 minutes from Bloomington. And then from Peoria, after I spent a few months there, I went down to St. Louis and did some TV on the weekends at KMOX TV. And while I was there, I got the job with the Royals. So that was kind of the quick transition from college to State Farm for a few months to, I was still doing part-time at WJBC, but then I went full-time in Peoria, full-time, well, not totally full-time. I did weekends at KMOX TV before coming out to Kansas City.
The story of you getting that job is a pretty remarkable thing, including the fact that you had a very creative way to send your packaging of your interview, and also the fact that you really hadn't done an actual baseball game when you did the recordings that would eventually net you a major league job.
Yeah, at the time, Danny, the booths in both Wrigley Field, Comiskey Park, Chicago, and in Busch Stadium in St. Louis, there wasn't cable TV or anything else, and most big league clubs at that time did radio only, and once in a while maybe weekend TV games, and so there were a lot of empty booths. And WMBD in Peoria, as well as WJBC in Bloomington, both being Cardinal affiliates, well, I had that in, and I wrote the Cardinals and asked them if I could bring a friend and a tape recorder down to St. Louis and do a game as I was auditioning or going to for another job. And they said, sure, come on down. So my friend Charlie Brannon and I went down to St. Louis and set up the recorder, and I did a game, and then took it home, listened to the whole game, and then I took, 2 or 3 half innings, which I thought maybe were representative of the way I would broadcast the game. I did an inning where there was a couple of runs scored. I picked out an inning where nothing happened, and I had to kind of fill in, and then another half inning, which I thought might be okay, and then I sent that to them in a package, the people that were screening the applicants for the number 2 job with the Royals, and that's how I started that process.
Why don't you tell the audience what the creative way that you tried to get some attention with the package that you sent to them?
It's pretty corny, but it worked. And it was kind of the brainchild of a friend of mine who lived in Peoria, and he said, those little metal trays when you go into a bar and the waitress will bring a beer, whatever your chips over in a tray that has, in this case, Schlitz beer was the number 1 sponsor for the Royals. And so I asked the local bar if I could have their little tray. They had more than one, and it had Schlitz logo on it, and appropriately enough, and so I took my tape and I put a picture and my resume on the tape, wrapped it up, and I had a little note about, I hope you don't think this is really corny. I don't think I'm a Busch, B-U-S-C-H, leaguer, meaning a minor leaguer. Don't think I'm a Busch leaguer for having done a Cardinal game, but this is my last pitch for the Kansas City Royals job. Isn't that something? Wasn't that great?
Well, like you say, it worked. But
yeah, it did work. I don't know, but then I had an interview with Buddy Blattner. He told me at one time they had right around 250 applicants and for the job, and they kept whittling them down through the summer, through the fall, and then now we're into the late fall. And he called and he said, would you come down to St. Louis and we'll sit down? And he had a real nice finished basement with a little bar, and he said, we'll have some pizza and just sit around and chat. And I said, yeah, it sounds like fun. And he said, why don't you get down here around 4. It's about a 2.5, 3 hour drive from Bloomington. He said, get down here about 4 and we'll just go down to the basement and have a, chat. It sounded good. So I told my dad, I said, all right. And he was, excited about it. Who wasn't? I was kind of thrilled, but I had known about Buddy Blattner. Obviously, he was a national broadcaster of no ill repute. And so I told my dad, I said, okay, I'll meet down there about 4, and then I figured we'd talk for 2, 3 hours. And I said, I'll be home by 10. And went down, and we sat there, and we talked, and we talked, and we talked. And it was 4:30 in the morning. And Buddy said, I said, I guess I better be going. He said, why don't you stay here and you can, get up in the morning and drive back? And I said, no. I said, I'll go back. So we talked for a while longer, and then about 7 in the morning, finally the sun was up, and I jumped in my car and made the 2.5, 3-hour drive back to Bloomington, and I pulled into the driveway. My dad was doing something in the garage. I got out of the car, and I said, I told you I'd be home by 10. Only it was AM, not Saturday or not Friday night.
You must have felt like you had a pretty good chance at the job then if you spoke to the man for 12 hours or more than that.
Yeah, we just hit it off, and I obviously admired him, and he was a great storyteller, and I'm not sure I said all that much. I just kind of sat there and listened to some great stories, and we had some laughs, and it was a evening, of course, into the wee hours of the morning I'll never forget. But you're right, I had a really nice feeling about it when I got home on that Saturday morning, and then Tuesday night, why they called from the agency. It wasn't Buddy, but they called from the agency, and the guy said, I guess you got the Royals job. And I said, no, I didn't know that, but thanks for telling me. That's good to know.
Yeah, absolutely.
And about 2 weeks later, I came out and signed the contract with the Royals, and away we went.
The rest is history, as they say. Did you at the time have any sense how amazing it was that you got that job over all those contestants at your age in those circumstances? It's amazing.
Yeah, and no, I didn't. I had no clue. Like I said, I was pretty naive about the whole thing, but I just kind of did it on a lark. I thought, make a tape. But Buddy said, I asked him later when we were working together, and we really knew each other. And I said, why did you pick me? I know there were a lot of guys. And he said, we had applications from everywhere. He said, guys were doing recreations in their basement. Guys were making things up and going out and doing a high school game. He said, we had tapes of every kind from everywhere. And he said, but 2 or 3 things really stood out when we listened to your tape. He said, number one, you were applying for a major league job, and you took the time and the trouble to go to St. Louis and tape a major league game. And he said, number 2, he said, I knew you had played. He said, I could tell that you knew the game. He said, even strategically and talking about different plays, why that play worked, why that play didn't, that you had played, and you had a good feel for that. And he said, number 3, he said, you were very young, and he said, it's a brand new team. He was my dad's age. And he said, I just thought it would be good to get a young guy. And his idea was to work for another 4, 5, 6 years. There wasn't a definitive number, but he was looking at retirement. And he said, I can kind of, show you the ropes, introduce you to people, bring you along. And he was true to his word, and he taught me a lot about the fundamentals of putting together a Major League Baseball broadcast. And he was a great teacher. He was a great tutor, and we got along great. And I obviously tried to learn a lot from him, and hopefully I did.
It was a time when basically one person would do the innings, and the other person would do the innings, and there wasn't a lot of talking back and forth. But he liked to have you listen there, didn't he?
Yeah, we'd go out and have pizza. This is spring training now, my first year, and twice a week we'd go out and have pizza and talk. And he said, there's one thing that you have to do, and he said, that is concentrate. He said, you have to listen to everything I say, because I'm going to do the first 2 innings, you'll do the next 2, and I don't want you repeating exactly what I said in the first 2 innings in your 2 innings. He said, that would sound awful. And he said, I want you to develop your own style. I want you to do the game the way you want to do it. He said, don't think you have to do an imitation of me, because if you try to imitate me, what we'll get is a crummy imitation of me. He said, I want you to do the game the way you want to do it. And I thought, you know what? That makes a lot of sense. That sounds pretty good. So he also said, if you want to talk back and forth during your innings, we can do that. If you want to jump in when I'm on the air doing play-by-play, please do. He said, you'll see things that I don't. I'll see things that you don't. And we can compress that into a nice, informative broadcast. But his basic rule was, I'm here for you, but I'm going to stay out of your way. When it's your 3 innings, I did 3, 4, and 7. When it's your innings, if you don't want to talk to me or you don't want to have a conversation, fine. If you want to, fine. But I'm not going to press you. I'm not going to, jump on every other thing you say. I'm going to get out of your way, let you develop the way you want to develop, and do the game the way you want to do it. And I thought that was a pretty good strategy.
Did you feel like when you think back that you basically had your style pretty much from the start? Did you obviously you're going to refine things and learn things. There's no question about that. But did you feel like pretty early on that you had a handle on how you wanted to broadcast a baseball game?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. I've never thought of that. I think what evolved was over time you do evolve into what you do, and it changes. I mean, there's going to be subtle changes. I think we all go through that in every aspect of the business. I'm sure you will say the same thing. You've evolved in the way you do things from the time you started, and I think that was true with me. And you get into a comfort zone. You do it the way you feel most comfortable and where you can be the most informative. Obviously, the thing I've always focused on is just absolutely detailed, describe the play. That's the main job of what we do, is to describe the play on radio, paint the word picture, and be as accurate as you possibly can. And there are several elements that follow that. You have to. Buddy always said, well, you have to entertain, but he said, if you're going to be a real good radio baseball broadcaster, not only do you have to tell the audience what happened, now you have to tell them how it happened and why it happened. And so in other words, he was telling me, you not only have to be your play-by-play guy, you've got to be your own analyst. And aside from Bud, with rare exceptions, I've never worked with anybody who had played baseball that much. Certainly no major league player in the broadcast booth. Now, John Wathen very briefly worked on the radio side. Paul Splittorff, I did some of the Royals playoff games starting in, I think, 85. We did some of the Royals broadcasts together. But aside from that, I've never had an ex-player sitting beside me in the booth. So I've had to not only do the play-by-play, I've also had to analyze, not only tell them what happened, but tell them how and why.
What was life for you like away from baseball? You're a young man, you're in your 20s. The Royals got good pretty fast, so that's an aspect we don't really have to visit. You didn't have to do a lot of bad baseball. That would come later. But what was it like moving to Kansas City, as a young man, away from baseball?
Oh, it was great. I was the same age as the players. In fact, quite a few of the players were older than I when I started, and so I developed very good friendships and relationships with them. And rather than hang out with the manager and the coaches who were much older, Buddy was my dad's age, and they would socialize. Buddy was great friends with some of the Royals managers and a lot of the coaches, and they'd go out and do their thing, and I'd go with the players and do our thing. And a funny thing happened, though, after about 20, 25 years. So I got older, but the players didn't. And all of a sudden, I'm where Buddy was when I started. So, and that changed, and so on. But it was great when I was that age and away from home for the first time, and no worries in the world. And I'd been to a couple of the big league ballparks, but not many. But West Coast, East Coast, I got to see all those for the first time. So yeah, it was a great ride for a lot of years, and I had some wonderful relationships and friendships with a lot of the players. Marty Patton, who pitched for the Royals, he and I knew each other from high school, college, and junior legion summer ball because we had played against each other quite a few times. And, of course, I knew Marty, and we became really good friends. But so many of the guys who were basically my age really formed a nice friendship and bond with.
What did you like to do away from baseball as a young man for like hobbies or things that, how did you spend your time?
Well, off season, I was involved in playing hockey. I always enjoyed playing hockey. When I got into college, one of my buddies in college got me into playing hockey. It's a little bit late to start that, but I got to the point where I could play reasonably well, so I'd play hockey in the wintertime and watch hockey, and I had chances to do some football, basketball, and hockey. KMOX called and asked me if I wanted to do some of the Blues games on radio one year, and I didn't. I wasn't interested. And I remember Buddy saying, well, now you're going to work your tail off for 7 months with your baseball job. You're not going to have any holidays off in the summer. You're not going to have any weekends off. And he said, your off season is your vacation. That's your time. He said, you've given the Royals 7 months almost daily or nightly. And he said, you do what you want to do in the wintertime. He said, if you want to do other sports, radio, TV, I'm all for you. If you don't, I don't blame you, because he didn't do it either. And so I took that to heart, and I thought, yeah, it's a long grind. The baseball season is a grind, no matter how you slice or cut it. And it was nice to have time off and not have to worry about catching a bus or getting on an airplane or being at the ballpark at a certain time every evening. So it was a nice break from that, and I thought it was important to recharge the battery and get away from it. And then, boy, spring training comes along, and you're ready to go again, and that's always an exciting thing.
The Royals, as I mentioned, became a good baseball team very quickly, and an incredible story for an expansion team, and they were competitive within just a handful of years. And so you would go on a long run of doing really, important baseball, and they were good all the time. And this city really reacted to it well, and the attendance was great. And no doubt, especially in a time when there were very few games on television, I mean, you were the eyes and ears of, thousands and thousands of fans. And that must have been a cool feeling.
Yeah, for sure. And we had a nice big network all over the Midwest. And the Royals were good from year one. Actually, the Royals, it's easy to remember, in 1969, the Royals' first year, they won 69 wins in 69, and that's how they launched that ship. And fell back a little bit in year two, and then by year three, you could see that Cedric Tallis, who was the general manager, made some really good trades, and almost exclusively with National League teams, which was very smart because National League was, quite frankly, a better league than the American League at that time. And he got some really good players out of the National League teams, and the Royals, all of a sudden, after year three, and the A's were really good. The A's and Baltimore were the two best teams of that era. And all of a sudden, during year three, you could see the development of the Royals, and they were starting to chase the A's, and it only took another 2 or 3 years before they did chase them down and go to the playoffs for the first time in '76. So, yeah, it was pretty good from the very start.
And it culminated with a world championship, obviously, in 1985. And, the Royals had a lot of disappointment. They've been a very good team, but their postseasons had been filled with disappointment. There was, wasn't multiple layers of playoffs then. And, you won your division, you played somebody else, and oftentimes it was the Yankees, and the big bad Yankees beat them. So when you got to 85, and the Royals had now been a championship caliber team for a decade, and then finally hit the mountaintop, maybe in the most unusual of fashion, sort of like the Kansas City Chiefs, maybe, with falling behind all those times in the playoffs last year. But what was it like when you went through the disappointments, and you were friends with these guys, obviously, and then they won it all?
Yeah, it was pretty sweet, obviously. And as I say, you could really see it, feel it coming. And Whitey Herzog had been named manager by that time, and he really put the team together beautifully. His managerial skills were second to none. Whitey was always, I felt, 2 or 3 innings ahead of the other manager. And he was the type of guy who made every one of the 25 players on the roster feel like they were the most important guy on the roster. Now, he had his starting 9, his starting 8 in the pitcher, and then his bench guys, the extra guys, and he might have had 5 or 6 of those. He would spend time with them and make them feel like hey, you're really a big part of this thing. And he just had a great way of making everybody feel like they were a very important part of that team. And the one thing that Whitey could never get enough of was a left-handed pitcher in his bullpen. If he could have had 37 pitchers left-handed in his bullpen, he would have. Because the Yankees, think about this, the Yankees had those great left-handed hitters at the time, and seems like they had about 12 guys in the dugout who were all left-handed hitters. They'd run them out there in the 7th, 8th, and 9th innings, bench hitters. So, and he had the short porch at the old Yankee Stadium too. So that's why the Yankees are so predominantly left-handed hitting, not only starting lineup but also bench. And Whitey always wanted to counter that with left-handed pitching out of the bullpen, and he could never get enough. But those were great rivalry. That was a great rivalry from the mid-'70s to 1980. And, of course, the Yankees prevailed 3 times, and Whitey always said if he'd had Rich Gossage in his bullpen, or Forster, any guy who was a power pitcher out of the bullpen, why the Royals, instead of losing all 3 to the Yankees, would have won at least 2 of those. And so, obviously, when they finally beat the Yankees in 80, it was getting the monkey off the back. But people don't remember, few people don't remember the great games the Royals and Yankees played, not in the playoffs necessarily, but during the regular season. My goodness, they were classics. They were some great games during the regular season. And, of course, most people remember the details of all the playoffs. But, that was a very heated, a very great rivalry, Royals and Yankees, for quite a few years.
The Royals would become a different kind of franchise after they won the championship. They'd spend more money and bring stars in and things like that, but still an extremely relevant team, drawing incredible crowds and coming close to selling out the games. It was really a glorious time for the Royals.
Yeah, you're right. They did start to spend a little extra money on free agents, but it's interesting. The free agents that they got usually didn't work out all that well, and but that was true not only with the Royals, but with other teams. Once in a while, there was a free agent who really contributed to whatever team he happened to be on. But the Royals were still very good for a long period of time. And then, of course, everything in sports seems to be in cycles. And then the Royals hit the down skids a little later on, starting, in early to mid-'90s, I guess. And took a while to dig out of that.
More of Danny's Reasonably Irreverent podcast after this.
Most of us have experienced auto accidents, and it's no fun. And even less fun is trying to work on the insurance aspects afterwards and getting full value after an auto accident. I'm here with David Cowan from RecExpert.com. And David, you have an unusual and important niche for people after an auto accident.
We have a passion to teach car wreck clients what they deserve. Getting your car repaired only fixes the damage and the paint. Getting paid for your car's loss in value is called diminished value. Chances are you've never heard of this before because most people aren't looking out for you. We help people collect thousands to tens of thousands of dollars for their car's loss in value after the wreck.
And if somebody wants to come to you for that, what's the original assessment cost them?
We offer a free review of any insurance claim to see how we can help.
You can't beat that. Great expertise and assistance in getting full value after an auto accident. From David Cowan, visit RecExpert.com and learn more.
Hi, everybody. This is Matt Llewellyn from 23rd Street Brewery in Lawrence. I just want to thank everybody for supporting local restaurants during this time of uncertainty. 23rd Street Brewery is now open until this pandemic is over. And right now, more than anything, local restaurants need your help and support. Come on out and see us. 23rd Street Brewery is open now from 11:30 till 9 o'clock for dine-in and carry-out. Whatever we can do to help you out, maybe with your catering needs, too. I appreciate all the support, and thank you for continuing to shop local.
It's time to visit once again with Dr. Brad Woodle of Advanced Sports and Family Chiropractic and Acupuncture. And Dr. Brad, your group has reached a significant milestone in receiving a prestigious award.
Danny, we've been honored for the 10th year in a row to receive the 5-Star Service Award from Integrity Doctors. And what this means is that all of our offices throughout Kansas City have made sure to give people excellent chiropractic and acupuncture care, be on time, and do a very complete and thorough job, and have great responses back from patients.
I know firsthand because I was just treated, for instance, today by you. You have a wide range of fantastic services.
Absolutely. Chiropractic, acupuncture, physiotherapies, rehab, anything that you need to keep you well in bones, muscles, joints, and nerves.
And I can't say how much it's benefited me in the time I've coming here, upwards of 2 years. My back has improved 100%. And you can have that same kind of treatment too. For more information and your chance for a healthier way of life, visit asfca.com/Danny today. I'm here with Tim Emerson, the owner of Emerson & Company. And Tim, give us an idea of the range of services that you provide from Emerson & Company.
At Emerson & Company, we do credit card processing, payroll services. We do bookkeeping, merchant accounts like point-of-sale systems.
What would you say differentiates you from other companies in the field, and what makes you special?
I think what makes us unique is that we're a small local business making regional decisions on companies. We create a profile for the business and then put it out to our different vendors in a very competitive environment and tailor those needs to the specific business, which usually ends up in a great fit or great result for the company.
And, of course, the idea is to save money, right?
Save money, and actually sometimes I'm surprised where actually a solution that may cost a little bit more ultimately does save money, but we're not conditioned to think like that sometimes.
Emerson & Company. Check them out at emerson-co.com or call them at 816-360-9092. If you'd like to join these and other great sponsors and market your business to a growing and engaged audience, contact us at Danny@DannyKlinkScale.com. Look forward to hearing from you. Denny Matthews is our guest. He's a Baseball Hall of Famer, obviously, Royals Hall of Famer. His accolades, I think one of the lines is, your dad told you if you hang around long enough and you do your job reasonably well, you're going to start to get a bunch of awards. And certainly you have, and you've deserved every bit of them, Halls of Fame left and right as well. I want to ask you, when that transition came, the strike came, basically the Royals sort of decline as a team sort of coincided with the baseball strike. They were having a very good season when the strike came. And then it would be a long stretch of non-competitive baseball. After all those years of winning and doing relevant games, how much of a challenge was it for you, after really a couple of decades of good baseball, to call bad baseball?
I always felt, Danny, that if the team wasn't real good, I had to be a little better. So that was my thrust when I would go to the ballpark every night. And actually, even though the team wasn't very good and you weren't going to win the pennant, why, out of 162 games, well, there was going to be quite a few that were really good games,
right,
win or lose. And so I would always go to the ballpark, hopeful that both teams played well. It was a very interesting game, obviously hoping the Royals would win, but even if they didn't and both teams played well and it was a good game, it was a good broadcast, why, hey, I had no control over it. I didn't field a ground ball. I didn't throw a pitch. I didn't swing the bat. So I was beholden to what happened down in the field. So you try to make it as interesting as possible. You try to have some fun with it. And so that was my tact when the team wasn't all that good. I would show up at the ballpark hoping that both teams played well. Now, there were times when you go to the ballpark, one team would play really well and one team wouldn't, and the final score was 8-1. Well, that wasn't exactly a classic. And then there would be other times when neither team could get out of their own way in a game, and the final score would be 8-6 or something, and you'd have some fun with that because there were going to be some goofy things that happened, no doubt, but neither team played very well. But yeah, if both teams are playing well, those are fun to do.
Obviously, by this time, you'd been doing it a long, long time. And at one point, I think you maybe came back from a flight and you got stuck in traffic or something like that, and you thought about the fact that you might want to retire when you were 50 years old. Obviously, that didn't happen. But was that in any way, shape, or form serious?
I guess as you go through life, you have some funny thoughts from time to time. But, yeah, I thought after, some long road trips, and now it's the end of August, and, you're pretty well worn down by the long baseball season. Gee, it might be kind of nice to not have to, do 162 games this next year. And I think Ryan Lefevre and I were talking about it one time, and we decided that you shouldn't consider retirement either at the start of the baseball season or at the very end of the baseball season,
right,
for obvious reasons. So I think that's a pretty good rule of thumb, and I think we both agree to that, but neither one of us is retired yet.
Your style is one that I just really love. It's very matter of fact. You do the details of the game. You don't often get very excited, but you get excited at the proper times. If anything has ever been criticized about your work, in some people's eyes, it's the fact that maybe sometimes you should get a little bit more excited. I don't think that in any way, shape, or form. Have you ever thought about what your style is and how people's reaction to it is? I know that you enjoy the fans at FanFest because that's really the only kind of feedback you can get, and they love your work generally. But how do you feel about the way you present a baseball game?
Well, as Buddy told me in the long ago, do the game the way you are most comfortable doing it. And yeah, I've heard, well, how come you don't get more excited? Well, how do you know how excited I am? We all show excitement in different ways, right?
Right.
And how does, Sam know that I'm not excited? You don't sound excited. Well, I am excited. Now, sometimes if there's something really exciting, you'll know, and I will be, and it will show. But, I can be really excited about something that it may not sound quite like that. But that's me. That's just my personality. That's my style, I guess. When I played sports, I didn't get overwhelmed by something that happened that was very positive, and I didn't get really distressed and down about a bad game. And I remember I did an interview with Carl Yastrzemski a long time ago, and he said, in the long baseball season, to get through it, you can't get too up or too down. You have to have an even keel, and you'll make it. But he said, if you're sky high today and down in the dumps 2 days from now, hey, by the All-Star break, you're going to be a mess. So, you stop and think about that, there's a lot to that.
No question about that. But after a lot of years of bad baseball, the Royals would once again become relevant, and you obviously hung around for the entire ride of it. You're still doing it. Did it make it extra rewarding for you that maybe you could have walked away at a couple of 3 points and finished in a time when the Royals had been bad for quite a long time? How rewarding was it when they started to be good again?
Well, it was terrific, and you could see it coming. You could see it, you could hear it, you could smell it. From maybe 2 years before they won the World Series, and then that'd be 1 year when they got to the World Series and the Giants prevailed. But the year or two before that, the Royals went from a team that you could beat them pretty easily. They make one mistake or two mistakes, the other team would jump all over it, and you lose, and you lost 93 or 4 or 5 games. Well, 2 years before they got to the World Series for the first time, during that season, the Royals were a lot more difficult to beat. And there's a big difference between being easy to beat and being hard to beat. All of a sudden, being very, very hard to defeat the Royals, you can see them improving in all areas. The next year, they were really, really good. I mean, they didn't make to the World Series, but boy, they were right on the brink. And then, of course, came the next 2 years. You play in the World Series, you lose that one, and then you play the Mets and you win it. But it was a process, and you could see the evolution beginning 4.5 years prior to the night where everybody was jumping around at the ballpark in New York after having beaten the Mets in the World Series. But yeah, it was really fun just to see that transition from not really very good to, hey, you know what, we're getting to be pretty darn good, to now we're tough to beat, and now we're winners. And yeah, that was a 4.5 year process, which was fun to watch.
Just before the Royals started to get good again, you got the ultimate honor for baseball, the Ford Frick Award, being named to the Baseball Hall of Fame in the broadcasting wing. That's an incredible honor. Obviously, it's maybe one a year, not always even that. But what was that like? What was it like to get up there in front of all those people at a beautiful place like Cooperstown and get the ultimate honor that a baseball announcer can get?
Well, before I went, and George Brett had gone in a few years before, mm-hmm. I asked him about the experience, and he said it'll be 4 of the fastest days of your life. It'll be 4 of the most exciting days of your life. And he said, if you can do it, slow it down and just ingest every bit of it that you can. And I tried to do that, and I think I did pretty well. I did go fast. He was right, but it was just full of great people, incidents, conversations, events, playing in the golf tournament with Carlton Fisk and Whitey Ford. They were my partners.
Wow.
Sitting around with Harmon Killebrew, Johnny Bench at breakfast and hear them tell jokes and stories. And then the day of the induction, which was a Sunday afternoon, and because Cal Ripken was one of the inductees, Baltimore and Cooperstown aren't that far apart, and a lot of people they were adjudged to have the biggest crowd ever for an induction. They had 95,000 people, and it's an outdoor stage, and you could see people way, way off in the distance, maybe a half mile, and then there's a gentle rolling hill, and this is upper New York, which you could see, and there were people at the very edge of that hill. Man, it was a half a mile away, and they said there were 95,000 people. And so then you have to get up and do your speech, and you're sitting there with 85 Hall of Famers behind you on the stage and 95,000 people in front of you and your family and friends, and it's a daunting experience. Tom Seaver introduced me, and we talked about it before the event, and he said, how do you feel about this? I said, I'll tell you what, I played college football, and there's a process where you go from Monday to Saturday, and the emotion, the excitement builds from Monday's practice until you hit the field on Saturday, and it's game day. And I told Tom Seaver, I said, it's game day. That's how I felt.
You have always, for somebody who's in such a public position, you've always been a very private person. And I think that you probably are less known. I think people probably know less about you than they do about many other famous people in Kansas City or maybe anywhere else. Was that just a personal choice of yours, or did it just so happen that way?
It's okay. It's fine. I don't need to be on camera, on mic, on stage every other day or night. No, it's just, I do what I do and thoroughly enjoy it. I enjoy the fans. I enjoy the listeners. I get a lot of feedback from Royals fans all over the area. People will sometimes recognize me when I'm out running errands in public, doing different things, and chat with them. But yeah, I don't have this great desire to be on. I'm on plenty once baseball starts, and I really don't need to keep reinforcing that. So, and you're right, I'm pretty private, and that's my choice, I guess. And I don't think I'm all that exciting. I don't know what people would find exciting about me unless I, playing hockey and hit somebody in the lips with a shot or something. But No, I just have chosen to, be myself, and I think I'm friendly enough. I don't shun people, and I think most people that I meet get along with me fine, and
yes.
Everything. So, yeah, it's just one of those things. I don't really think about it that much.
Well, now you've done this for over 50 years, and, some people mentioned Vin Scully and things like that. You obviously went way past 50 years. And you've been able to now tailor your schedule a little bit and not travel as much. And, of course, last year was completely different, and we hope we don't have to replicate that again. But when do you think about each year? Like you say, you don't think about it right at the end of the year. You don't think it at the start of the year, but you must think about it sometimes.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I think everybody has a plan in front of them, whether it'll work or not, or even eventuate, who knows. But, yeah, you think about those things, and the old story about this guy's day-to-day or week-to-week, why, I think it's just season to season, or probably day-to-day, if you really want to get right down to it. But, no, just continue on until it becomes a burden, and you have to force it. And but, yeah, cutting back has really helped. As I say, it's 162, and making every trip is a grind, and it takes a lot out of you. And it's becoming more and more common. I'm sure you've noticed broadcasters now are taking time off.
Right.
And I think it's really important, because you do need to get away from it for a bit, recharge the battery, relax, enjoy a little bit of the summer, which you don't have. You think about it, you go to spring training in late February, and you don't emerge from the baseball schedule until early October. And really, around here, I found that when I was doing all the games and I finally got to the off season, that October was really the only quality weather-wise month that you had to enjoy some outdoor things. So having regained some of the summer, and I think a lot of the other baseball announcers are beginning to realize that too, and there's more and more taking time off. Why it's pretty nice to have some of those beautiful summer days and summer evenings for yourself.
What do you feel like you've brought to Kansas City? You've been such an important person here, and you've been, you've brought the stories of the Kansas City Royals to dedicated fans through good and through bad. What do you feel like your legacy is?
Well, I would hope that people are comfortable inviting me into their environment, whether they're catching the game, maybe 2 or 3 innings while they're in the car, maybe they're out on their back patio on a summer night listening to the game, whether it's a lot of people that work nights, and if they're in a shop, they have the radio on, your company. They have invited you into their environment. And so that's a compliment. And if they enjoy your company and enjoy the game, why, that's all I could hope for.
This podcast was made possible by our great sponsors like
Easton Roofing, the presenting sponsor of Kansas City Profiles at the Danny Klink Scale Reasonably Irreverent podcast. Easton Roofing, where integrity matters.
We hope you enjoyed the latest Danny Klink Scale Reasonably Irreverent podcast. Come back soon for something fresh and new.